farmers and industry could actually generate $3 trillion in terms of agricultural, agribusiness activity. Moving to Nigeria, which is of course the largest economy in Africa, but certainly if we look at West Africa, Nigeria is a large producer of a number of products, but is also a large importer of products. If we take rice, Nigeria consumes today about 5 million tons of rice and only produces 3 million tons, meaning that it has to import 2 million each year. Our projections are that by 2030, the need will be in the range of 13 million tons. So in some sense, it's an opportunity for the states who can position themselves to serve not only Ogun State, but go beyond. So moving to Ogun State per se, we have looked at the macro situation of agriculture in Ogun, and we found that Ogun is the first largest producer, net producer of cassava. So there is a big potential there, and the yields are very good. We find that Ogun is not producing rice at the same level, but has high yields. So that means that looking at staple food crops and also the transformation, a targeted positioning of Ogun activities could really generate a lot of benefits. Now, what do we see in terms of the constraints from Ogun? First of all, we found that the processing capacity is, as of today, unutilized in the range of 30 to 50% for cassava processors and in the range of 50% for rice. So clearly, looking at an integrated approach of this value chain would create opportunities for the agribusiness for Ogun State to tap into this large market that is Lagos next door, as His Excellency the Governor has mentioned that 50% of the labor force of Lagos lives in Ogun, and you have to feed these people. Now, Dr. Salami, I would like to maybe indicate what are the areas that the government could look at. Indeed, attracting this private sector will require working on this infrastructure. Very often when I discuss with my colleagues, they say the problem of agriculture is not a problem of agriculture per se, it's transport, to be able to transport the products toward the market. If we look at the production itself, how do you improve the productivity, make the inputs accessible to the farmers, the fertilizer, and I know that the government has put in place now a scheme that allows the private sector to invest in the input chain and provide good fertilizer and seeds at good price. But moving toward the processing, we know that one constraint is power, looking at how accessible power will be provided to the various investors. But I think that we also need to look at one element that President Fox mentioned, which is the innovation, the technology. There is a need to develop the skills, not only in basic, but also in technical education, vocational education. And there is also the need to make access to also the internet and these other tools that will allow even farmers to access information on pricing, on provide extension services, through mobile phone, as we are now experimenting in a few states. Let me also add the issue of financing, which is an area where the World Bank is actually looking very closely and proposing to develop a development finance institution that will focus in long-term financing for the agricultural sector and SMEs, because we know that it is one area of constraint. So in summary, I would like to say Ogun positioned itself indeed to feed this important market that is next door, Lagos, but it requires looking at it from a value chain perspective and identify indeed all the pieces to create what I would call a virtuous cycle. And I don't see any reason why Ogun should not succeed in doing that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Actually, some very interesting points you make, and I think two of them are particularly striking, and I will come to you, Chief Ogbu, in a minute. You make the point that the third largest producer of cassava and also a producer of rice. But for me, I think the point about being able to feed not just the market in Lagos, but the West African market is particularly particularly interesting and worthy of note. Now, Chief Ogbe, you listened to the contribution from the World Bank's country director and some of these prospects. As a practitioner, what would you say are the key challenges that practitioners face in trying to improve the quality, the quantity, and access to markets and some of the issues that have been raised?
Yes, thank you for the questions. The first issue is that farmers have difficulties accessing credit. The current banking structure and the profile of interest rates is such that banks are generally reluctant to lend to agriculture because the banks aren't sure of getting their money back. And this is caused by a number of other factors. The quality of seed in Nigeria is very low. A Zimbabwean farmer who plants 1 hectare of maize is almost certain to get between 8 and 10 tons of harvest. The Nigerian farmer who plants maize on 1 hectare, and a hectare, by the way, is a football field, is not likely to harvest more than 2 tons. And the seed quality is one. The second problem is that farmers don't even know how to plant maize on their farms. They don't even know how to plant rice. I was in the United States in Nebraska just 2 months ago, and farmers will tell you they plant between 100,000 and 180,000 stands of maize on 1 hectare, planting 7 inches apart. If a Nigerian farmer does up to 8,000 stands of maize per hectare, the farmer has done very well. So the disparity is there. Number 2, cassava. Yes, Ogun is the leader, but that leadership is going to disappear shortly because 1 hectare of cassava is not too easy to harvest, especially when the rains are gone and the soil has gotten hard. You have to bring village women and men, transport them, feed them, keep them on the farm, and their output per day is very low. So we have to begin to think of machines for harvesting cassava. In fact, planting cassava. And I am glad to say that I have ordered a few, which should be here shortly. And I said to the governor that I will probably make 1 or 2 available to Ogun State. Because if you can't harvest the cassava, you can't deliver to the processor. Because the processor has a schedule. He's making industrial starch. Nestle is converting cassava to an ingredient for making Maggi cubes and so on. Nestle can't wait for you because you can't harvest your cassava in the dry season. So Nestle has to go elsewhere and bring corn starch from Europe, which is too expensive. And then, of course, we have other issues which we are very worried about. The state has to do a bit more investment in dams, because even though Ogun has one of the highest rainfall levels in the country, an average of between 1,800 and 2,000 millimeters of rain per annum, compared to Borno, which has 400 millimeters, climate change is becoming extremely complicated. Last year in Oyo State, farmers planted maize and found that by the middle of September, the rains had stopped. So the output of maize was so low, they couldn't support the poultry industry. And Ogun is the poultry capital of West Africa. Now the farmer needs maize, he needs groundnuts, and he needs soybeans to be able to do his poultry farming successfully. The price of maize moved up to 100,000 naira per ton from 60,000 during the harvest. It had a terrible impact on the poultry industry in Ogun State. And then the Boko Haram crisis in the north prevented Ogun farmers from selling his eggs across to Borno and to Chad. These were the problems that the farmer had to confront. Now, finally then, you have issues like obstacles in the way of other production programs. The President Fox said something about livestock. The Nigerian cow you see wandering around eating up farmers' crops, leading to these